While reactive people are burning energy fighting every wave, calm people are learning from it. While others spiral, they observe. While most people are drained by chaos, they grow through it. The compound advantage of that difference played out over years is staggering. Calmer people make better decisions. They maintain better relationships. They perform better under pressure. And they report dramatically higher life satisfaction. And the gap between where you are and where they are is not as wide as it feels. It starts with understanding how they think, and that understanding starts right now. Like this, subscribe and share it. Every day closer to calm is worth it. Chapter 1: The Still Mind Advantage. Most people think calmness is weakness. They mistake silence for hesitation, patience for passivity, and emotional control for a lack of ambition. But look closer at the people who consistently win in life, in business, in relationships, and in moments of pressure. They are not the loudest in the room. They are not the most reactive. They are the ones who remain steady when everyone else is shaking. Calm people think differently. That difference is not just personality, it is strategy. Imagine two people standing in the same storm. One panics, running in circles, reacting to every gust of wind. The other stands still for a moment, studies the direction of the storm, and moves with intention. The storm does not change, but the outcome does. Calm thinking is not about avoiding chaos. It is about mastering your response within it. In everyday life, this shows up in subtle but powerful ways. When a deadline is missed, most people react with stress, blame, or excuses. Calm thinkers pause, they assess, they focus on solutions instead of spiraling into problems. In a heated argument, most people try to win. Calm thinkers try to understand. They listen longer than they speak. And because of that, they see angles others miss. This is not natural for most people. It is trained. From a young age, people are conditioned to react. Notifications demand instant replies. Social media rewards outrage. News cycles thrive on urgency. Everything pushes you to think fast, speak fast, decide fast. But speed is not always intelligence. In fact, speed without clarity is often the cause of regret. Calm people build a gap between stimulus and response. In that gap they think. And in that thinking they gain power. Consider a business leader facing a sudden crisis. Sales drop overnight, employees are anxious, competitors are aggressive. A reactive leader makes rushed decisions, cuts corners, and spreads panic. A calm leader slows down just enough to see clearly. They gather information, prioritize what matters, and act with precision. That difference in thinking creates a difference in results. The same applies in personal life. When someone criticizes you, the immediate urge is to defend yourself, to prove them wrong, to protect your ego. But calm thinkers ask a different question. Is there any truth here? What can I learn? Even if the criticism is unfair, they do not let it control their emotions. They control their interpretation. This is where calmness becomes a competitive advantage. It allows you to operate above the noise. Most people are driven by emotion first, logic second. Calm people reverse that. They feel emotions, but they do not let emotions make decisions. They observe their feelings like data, not commands. Anger becomes a signal, not an action. Fear becomes information, not paralysis. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway. And subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. To think calmly, you must first understand that your mind is trainable. Just like your body, it adapts to what you repeatedly do. If you constantly react, you become reactive. If you consistently pause, reflect, and choose your response, you become calm. Start with small moments. When something minor goes wrong, resist the urge to react instantly. Take a breath. Give yourself a few seconds before speaking or acting. That pause may feel insignificant, but it is the foundation of calm thinking. Over time, those small pauses compound. They turn into habits, and those habits turn into identity. Calm people also focus on what they can control. This sounds simple, but it is rarely practiced. Most people waste energy on things outside their control: other people's opinions, unpredictable outcomes, past mistakes. Calm thinkers redirect that energy. They ask, what is within my control right now? My effort, my attitude, my next step. That focus creates clarity, and clarity reduces stress. Another key difference is how calm people view time. Reactive thinkers live in urgency. Everything feels immediate and overwhelming. Calm thinkers understand that not every problem needs to be solved right now. They prioritize, they delay what can wait, they act on what matters most. This does not mean they procrastinate. It means they are deliberate. There is a quiet confidence in calm thinking. It is not loud, but it is powerful. It comes from knowing that you do not need to rush to prove anything. You trust your process, you trust your judgment, and because of that you move with intention instead of impulse. But calmness is not the absence of pressure. It is the mastery of it. Pressure will always exist. Deadlines, expectations, competition, uncertainty, these are constants. What changes is how you respond, and that response begins in your mind. The goal is not to eliminate stress. The goal is to remain steady within it. As you move through your day, notice your reactions. Notice when you feel the urge to rush, to argue, to defend, to panic. Those are opportunities to practice calm thinking. Because every time you choose calm over chaos, you strengthen that part of your mind. And over time, that strength becomes your edge. So as you reflect on this, consider this. When was the last time you reacted too quickly and regretted it later? What would have changed if you had paused for just a moment? Where in your life are you allowing urgency to control your thinking? And what would it look like to approach those situations with calm instead? Chapter 2: They control their inner dialogue. By now it's clear that calm people don't eliminate chaos, they outthink it. They create space between what happens and how they respond. And in that space they gain control. Where most people react on impulse, calm thinkers move with intention. And that single difference reshapes everything. But that level of control doesn't start in the moment of pressure. It starts much earlier, in a place most people ignore. It starts with the voice inside your head. Every day, from the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep, there is a constant stream of thoughts running through your mind. Most people never question it. They assume that voice is them. They accept every thought as truth, and that is where they lose control. Calm people think differently because they do not blindly trust their thoughts. They observe them, they question them, they manage them. Imagine waking up on a Monday morning, the alarm goes off, and the first thought hits: I'm tired, I don't feel like doing this today. Most people let that thought dictate their mood, their energy, and eventually their actions. They move through the day already defeated. Now imagine a calm thinker in the same situation. The same thought appears, but instead of accepting it, they interrupt it. They replace it. They say it doesn't matter how I feel, I move anyway. That small shift changes the entire trajectory of the day. This is the power of inner dialogue. Your thoughts are not just random noise. They are instructions. They shape your emotions, your decisions, and your behavior. If your internal voice is negative, reactive, and undisciplined, your life will reflect that. If your internal voice is calm, focused, and intentional, your life will reflect that too. Most people have an inner voice that sounds like their worst critic. It magnifies problems, exaggerates risks, and constantly points out flaws. When something goes wrong, it says, "This always happens to me." When facing a challenge, it says, "I'm not ready." When criticized, it says, "I'm not good enough." Calm people refuse to let that voice run unchecked. They train it like a muscle. Instead of letting thoughts control them, they take control of their thoughts. They do not suppress negativity. They reframe it. When something goes wrong, instead of saying "this is a disaster," they say "this is feedback." When facing uncertainty, instead of thinking "what if I fail," they ask "what can I learn?" When doubt appears, they do not eliminate it. They move forward anyway. This is not blind positivity. It is disciplined thinking. Consider a professional athlete stepping into a high-pressure game. The crowd is loud, the stakes are high, the margin for error is small. If their inner voice is filled with doubt, hesitation, and fear, their performance drops. But if their inner voice is steady, focused, and controlled, they execute. The same principle applies in everyday life. When you walk into a job interview, your inner dialogue determines your confidence. When you present an idea in a meeting, it shapes how you communicate. When you face a setback, it decides whether you quit or push forward. Calm thinkers understand that the battle is not outside. It is inside. They also understand that thoughts are not facts. Just because you think something does not make it true, yet most people treat their thoughts as reality. They believe every doubt, every fear, every negative assumption, and because of that they limit themselves. Calm people create distance. They see thoughts for what they are, temporary mental events, not permanent truths. One of the simplest ways to practice this is to label your thoughts. When a negative thought appears, instead of saying "I'm not capable," you say "I'm having the thought that I'm not capable." That small change creates separation. It reminds you that the thought is not you. It is something you are experiencing, and what you experience you can change. Another key difference is repetition. Calm people do not rely on motivation. They rely on consistency. They repeat constructive thoughts until they become automatic. Think about someone who constantly tells themselves, "I stay calm under pressure." At first it may feel forced, but over time that statement becomes identity. And when pressure hits, they act in alignment with it. Most people do the opposite. They repeat negative thoughts until those become identity. "I always mess things up. I can't handle stress. I'm not good at this." These statements repeated over time shape behavior. And behavior shapes results. Calm thinkers are intentional about what they repeat. They also protect their mental environment. Just like your physical environment affects your body, your mental environment affects your thinking. The content you consume, the conversations you engage in, the people you surround yourself with, all of it feeds your inner dialogue. If you constantly consume negativity, your thoughts will reflect it. If you surround yourself with reactive people, their mindset will influence yours. Calm thinkers are selective. They choose inputs that reinforce clarity, discipline, and control. This does not mean avoiding reality. It means choosing how you interpret it. There will always be noise, news cycles, social media, opinions, criticism. Calm people hear it, but they do not absorb it blindly. They filter it. They decide what deserves attention and what does not. This is mental discipline. And like any discipline, it requires practice. Start by becoming aware of your thoughts, not once, but throughout the day. Notice patterns. Notice how you speak to yourself when things go wrong. Notice how you respond to pressure. Awareness is the first step. Then begin to intervene. When a negative thought appears, do not let it run. Challenge it, replace it, redirect it. Over time, this becomes automatic. Your inner voice shifts from being a source of stress to a source of strength. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. As you move forward, understand this. You cannot always control what happens around you, but you can control what happens within you. And that internal control is what creates external results. The calmest people you know are not free from negative thoughts. They simply do not let those thoughts control them. They choose which thoughts to believe, which to ignore, and which to act on. That choice is available to you as well, so reflect on this. What does your inner voice sound like on a daily basis? Is it helping you move forward or holding you back? When negative thoughts appear, do you accept them or challenge them? And if you were to design a calm, disciplined inner voice, what would it say instead? Chapter 3: Detach from outcomes. By now you've seen that calm people don't just react differently. They think differently at the deepest level. They create space before responding, and they take control of their inner dialogue instead of being controlled by it. That foundation gives them something most people never develop: the ability to stay steady even when the stakes are high. And that stability comes from a principle that goes against how most people are wired. Calm people detach from outcomes. This does not mean they don't care. It means they don't cling. Most people tie their emotions directly to results. If things go well, they feel confident, energized, and in control. If things go poorly, they feel anxious, frustrated, and defeated. Their emotional state rises and falls based on external outcomes they cannot fully control. Calm thinkers break that connection. They focus on effort, not outcome. They commit to the process, not the result. And because of that, they remain stable whether they win or lose. Think about someone applying for a job. Most people obsess over getting the offer. They replay every detail, overanalyze every interaction, and attach their self-worth to the final decision. This creates pressure, and that pressure affects performance. A calm thinker approaches it differently. They prepare thoroughly. They show up focused. They give their best effort, but once it's done, they let it go. They understand that the final decision depends on many factors beyond their control. Their confidence does not collapse if they don't get the offer, because it was never tied to the outcome in the first place. This mindset is not passive, it is powerful. When you detach from outcomes, you reduce fear. And when fear is reduced, performance improves. Fear of failure is one of the biggest barriers to clear thinking. It makes people hesitate, second guess, and play small. But when you stop attaching your identity to the result, failure loses its power. It becomes information instead of judgment. Consider an entrepreneur launching a new product. If they are emotionally attached to the outcome, every setback feels personal. A slow start feels like failure. Negative feedback feels like rejection. This emotional volatility leads to poor decisions. A calm entrepreneur sees it differently. They treat the launch as an experiment. They gather data, they adjust, they improve. Success or failure does not define them, it informs them. That difference in thinking creates long-term success. Detachment also improves decision-making. When you are overly attached to a specific outcome, you become biased. You ignore warning signs, you justify bad choices. You hold on too long when you should let go. Calm thinkers stay objective. They evaluate situations based on facts, not emotions. They are willing to change direction when needed because their ego is not tied to being right. This is especially important in high-pressure environments. Imagine a leader managing a struggling project. A reactive leader attached to proving themselves may continue pushing a failing strategy just to avoid admitting a mistake. A calm leader steps back, reassesses, and makes the necessary changes even if it means pivoting completely. A detachment creates flexibility, and flexibility creates resilience. It also changes how you handle success. Most people become overconfident when things go well. They relax too soon. They stop paying attention to details. They assume the result will repeat itself. This complacency leads to decline. Calm people stay grounded. They appreciate success, but they do not cling to it. They continue focusing on the process that created it. They understand that results are temporary but habits are lasting. This balance keeps them consistent. Another area where detachment matters is relationships. When people become overly attached to specific expectations, they create unnecessary tension. They expect others to behave a certain way, to respond a certain way, to meet unspoken standards. When those expectations are not met, frustration builds. Calm thinkers approach relationships with clarity. They communicate, they set boundaries. But they do not try to control others. They accept that people are unpredictable and they adjust their expectations accordingly. This reduces conflict and creates healthier interactions. Detachment does not mean indifference, it means emotional control. You still care about your goals, you still work hard, you still aim for success, but you do not let the outcome control your identity or your state of mind. One of the most effective ways to practice this is to separate what you can control from what you cannot. You can control your preparation, you can control your effort, you can control your attitude. You cannot control other people's decisions, market conditions, or unexpected events. When you focus only on what you control, your mind becomes clearer. You stop wasting energy on things that do not move the needle. Another practice is to define success differently. Instead of measuring success only by results, measure it by execution. Did you follow through on your plan? Did you give your best effort? Did you improve from last time? This shift changes everything. It allows you to feel progress even before results show up, and that keeps you motivated. Calm people also understand the long game. They know that meaningful results take time. Because of that, they are less affected by short-term fluctuations. A single loss does not shake them. A single win does not distract them. They stay focused on the bigger picture. This long-term perspective is rare. Most people are driven by immediate gratification. They want quick results, fast validation, instant success. When that does not happen, they lose patience. Calm thinkers are different. They are willing to wait. They are willing to stay consistent even when results are not immediate. And because of that, they eventually outperform those who chase short-term wins. As you move through your own goals, notice where you are overly attached. Notice where your emotions depend on outcomes. That awareness is the first step toward change. Then begin to shift your focus. Put your energy into what you can control. Let go of what you cannot. Over time, this creates a sense of freedom. You are no longer controlled by external events. You are driven by internal standards. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. The more you practice detachment, the more stable you become. Pressure still exists, but it no longer overwhelms you. Outcomes still matter, but they no longer define you. And in that stability you gain an advantage that most people never develop. So reflect on this. Where in your life are you tying your self-worth to results? How does that affect your decisions and your emotions? What would change if you focused fully on your effort instead of the outcome? And how would your performance improve if fear of failure no longer controlled your thinking? Chapter 4. They think in systems, not moments. By now you've seen how calm people create space before reacting, how they take control of their inner dialogue, and how they detach from outcomes that most people cling to. That combination gives them stability in situations where others lose control. But there's another layer beneath all of it, something even more strategic, something that shapes how they approach life as a whole. Calm people don't think in isolated moments, they think in systems. Most people live reactively, moving from one situation to the next, making decisions based on what feels urgent in the moment. They wake up and immediately respond to messages, deadlines, problems, and demands. Their thinking is fragmented, their actions are inconsistent, and because of that their results are unpredictable. Calm thinkers step back and see patterns. They understand that a single moment rarely defines success or failure. What matters is the system behind it. The habits, the routines, the structures, the things that repeat day after day. Instead of asking what should I do right now, they ask what system will make this easier every time. This shift changes everything. Consider someone trying to get in shape. A reactive approach focuses on motivation. One day they feel inspired, they work out hard. The next day they don't feel like it, they skip. Their progress depends on their mood. A calm thinker builds a system. They schedule workouts at specific times. They prepare their meals in advance. They remove friction by making healthy choices easier and unhealthy choices harder. Their results no longer depend on how they feel in the moment, because the system carries them forward. The same principle applies in business. A reactive business owner constantly puts out fires. They deal with problems as they arise without addressing the root causes. They are always busy but rarely moving forward. A calm business owner builds systems. They create processes that reduce errors, improve efficiency, and prevent problems before they happen. They invest time upfront to save time later. And over time, those systems compound into consistent growth. This is the difference between effort and leverage. Most people rely on effort alone. Calm people use systems to multiply that effort. Another area where this shows up is decision-making. Reactive thinkers make decisions based on immediate pressure. They choose what feels right in the moment without considering long-term impact. Calm thinkers build decision frameworks. They define their priorities in advance, so when a decision comes up, they already know how to approach it. For example, if someone values health, growth, and financial stability, their decisions align with those values. They don't have to debate every choice. The system guides them. This reduces mental fatigue. Every decision you make uses energy. When you rely on moment-to-moment thinking, you exhaust yourself. But when you build systems, you automate parts of your life. You free up mental space for what truly matters. Calm people protect that mental space. They design their environment intentionally. They understand that willpower is limited but structure is reliable. Instead of constantly resisting distractions, they remove them. Instead of relying on memory, they use tools and routines. Think about something as simple as your morning. A reactive morning starts with chaos, checking your phone, rushing through tasks, reacting to whatever comes up. A system-driven morning is structured. You wake up at a consistent time. You follow a routine that prepares you mentally and physically. You start the day with clarity instead of confusion. That difference carries into everything else. Calm thinkers also track what matters. They don't guess, they measure. Whether it's finances, health, or performance, they pay attention to data, not obsessively, but consistently. This allows them to make informed decisions instead of emotional ones. Most people avoid this because it requires discipline. It's easier to react than to plan. It's easier to guess than to measure, but ease in the short term creates difficulty in the long term. Calm people choose the opposite. They accept a bit more effort up front to create ease later. They also understand feedback loops. Every action produces a result, and that result provides information. Instead of ignoring it or reacting emotionally, they use it to adjust their system. If something isn't working, they don't panic, they refine. This creates continuous improvement. Another key difference is how they handle setbacks. Reactive thinkers see setbacks as isolated failures. They focus on the moment and feel discouraged. Calm thinkers see setbacks as system feedback. They ask what part of the system needs to change. This perspective removes emotion from the equation. It turns problems into opportunities for optimization. It also builds resilience. When your focus is on systems, a single bad day doesn't derail you. You return to the system and it pulls you back on track. Consistency becomes easier because it's not dependent on perfection. This is how calm people stay steady over time. They also think in terms of inputs and outputs. Most people obsess over outputs, results, achievements, outcomes. Calm thinkers focus on inputs, the actions that led to those results. If you control the inputs consistently, the outputs follow. For example, instead of obsessing over making a certain amount of money, a calm thinker focuses on the actions that generate income. Improving skills, building relationships, creating value. The money becomes a byproduct. This reduces anxiety. When you focus only on results, you feel pressure. When you focus on actions, you feel control, and control creates calmness. As you start applying this, begin small. Identify one area of your life where you are reactive. It could be your work, your health, your finances, or your daily routine. Instead of trying to fix everything at once, build one simple system. Make it clear, make it repeatable, make it easy to follow, then stick to it. Over time, expand, add more systems, refine what you have, let them work together. This is not about perfection. It is about consistency. Calm people are not perfect. They simply rely less on moment-to-moment decisions and more on structured thinking. That structure gives them freedom. Freedom from constant stress, freedom from indecision, freedom from emotional swings. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this, leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. As you move forward, remember this: your life is not defined by a single moment. It is defined by what you do repeatedly. And what you do repeatedly is shaped by the systems you build. So reflect on this. Where in your life are you relying too much on motivation instead of structure? What simple system could you create to make that area more consistent? How would your stress levels change if you didn't have to decide everything in the moment? And what would your life look like if your daily systems worked for you instead of against you? Chapter 5, THEY Master Emotional Energy. At this point, you've seen that calm people don't rely on quick reactions. They create space. They don't let their thoughts run unchecked. They direct them. They don't tie themselves to outcomes, and they don't live moment to moment. They build systems. All of that creates stability. But there's something even deeper that holds it all together. Calm people understand energy, not just physical energy, but emotional energy. The kind that determines how you show up in conversations, how you handle pressure, and how you respond when things don't go your way. Most people think emotions happen to them. Calm people treat emotions as something they manage. Every day you wake up with a certain amount of energy. And every interaction, every thought, every decision either drains it or builds it. The problem is most people spend their energy carelessly. They give it away to things that don't matter. And by the time something important shows up, they're already depleted. Calm thinkers are intentional about where their energy goes. Think about a typical day. You check your phone first thing in the morning. Messages, emails, social media, news. Before you've even started your day, your mind is already reacting, already processing other people's priorities, already losing focus. By the time you sit down to do something meaningful, your energy is scattered. Now imagine approaching that same day differently. You start with clarity, no immediate distractions. You decide what matters before the world tells you what to care about. That simple shift preserves your energy. Calm people protect their mornings because they understand that how you start your day shapes everything that follows. But it goes beyond routines. They also manage emotional triggers. Most people have predictable triggers, situations that instantly shift their mood. A critical comment, a delayed response, a mistake, an unexpected problem. These triggers cause emotional spikes, anger, frustration, anxiety. Reactive thinkers get pulled into these emotions immediately. Calm thinkers recognize the trigger, but they don't let it take control. They pause. That pause is where energy is saved, Because every emotional reaction costs something. It drains focus, it clouds judgment, it creates tension. And often it leads to decisions that make things worse. Calm people don't suppress emotions. They process them without letting them explode. For example, imagine receiving a harsh email at work. The immediate reaction might be to respond defensively, to prove a point, to push back. But that reaction rarely leads to a productive outcome. A calm thinker reads it, feels the emotion, but doesn't act on it immediately. They step away, they let the intensity drop. Then they respond with clarity instead of impulse. That difference changes the result completely. Another key difference is how calm people recover. Emotional energy is not just about avoiding drains, it's about recharging effectively. Most people try to recover in ways that don't actually restore them. Endless scrolling, mindless entertainment, distractions that feel good in the moment but leave them more drained. Calm thinkers choose recovery that actually works. They step away from noise. They create space for their mind to reset. This could be as simple as going for a walk, sitting in silence, or focusing on a single task without interruption. These moments may seem small, but they rebuild energy. They also understand the importance of boundaries. Every time you say yes to something, you are saying no to something else. Most people say yes too often. They take on tasks, responsibilities, and commitments that don't align with their priorities. Over time, this overload drains their energy. Calm people are selective. They don't say yes out of pressure or habit. They evaluate, they decide based on what matters, and they are comfortable saying no when necessary. This is not about being difficult, it is about being focused. Another area where emotional energy plays a role is in comparison. In today's world, it's easy to constantly compare yourself to others. Social media makes it seem like everyone else is moving faster, achieving more, living better. This comparison drains energy. It shifts your focus away from your own path and onto someone else's. It creates unnecessary pressure. It leads to frustration and self-doubt. Calm thinkers avoid this trap. They stay in their lane. They measure progress against their own standards, not someone else's highlight reel. They understand that everyone is on a different timeline. And comparing journeys only creates noise. This keeps their energy focused. They also manage how long they stay in negative states. Everyone experiences frustration, disappointment, and stress. The difference is how long they stay there. Reactive thinkers get stuck. They replay situations, overthink, and extend the emotional drain. Calm thinkers move through it faster. They acknowledge the feeling, extract the lesson, and shift their focus. This is emotional efficiency. It allows them to maintain momentum even when things go wrong. Calm people also invest in activities that build emotional strength. This could be physical exercise, which not only improves health but also stabilizes mood. It could be reflection, which helps process thoughts and reduce mental clutter. It could be focused work, which creates a sense of progress and control. These habits are not random, they are chosen. Because calm thinkers understand that how you manage your energy determines how you perform. As you start applying this, begin by noticing where your energy goes. Throughout the day, pay attention to what drains you and what builds you, not in a vague way, but specifically. Which activities leave you focused and clear? Which ones leave you scattered and tired? Then start making adjustments, reduce the drains, increase the sources of energy, protect your time, protect your focus. Over time, this creates a noticeable shift. You feel more in control, more stable, more capable of handling pressure without being overwhelmed. And that is what separates calm people from everyone else. They don't have more time, they don't have fewer problems, they simply manage their energy better. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway. And subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. As you reflect on this, consider where your energy is being wasted. What situations consistently drain you and why? How often do you react emotionally instead of pausing first? What boundaries do you need to set to protect your focus? And what habits could you build that would strengthen your emotional energy instead of depleting it? Chapter 6: They Become the Standard. You've seen how calm people create space before reacting, how they take control of their inner dialogue, and how they detach from outcomes that most people cling to. You've seen how they build systems instead of relying on moments, and how they protect and direct their emotional energy. All of these are not separate skills. They are parts of a single transformation. Calm people don't just practice these principles, they become them. At some point, calm thinking stops being something you try to do and becomes who you are. It becomes your default, not because life gets easier, but because you become stronger, clearer, and more disciplined in how you approach it. Most people spend their lives reacting to external standards. They measure themselves against others. They wait for validation. They adjust their behavior based on opinions, trends, and pressure. Their identity is flexible, constantly shifting depending on what's happening around them. Calm people operate differently. They become their own standard. This means they decide in advance how they think, how they act, and what they stand for. They don't wait for situations to define them. They define themselves before the situation even begins. Imagine someone walking into a high-pressure negotiation. One person enters hoping they won't get overwhelmed, hoping they'll say the right things, hoping they'll hold their ground. Their confidence is uncertain because it depends on what happens in that moment. Now imagine a calm thinker walking into the same room. They already know who they are. They already know how they respond under pressure. They don't hope to stay calm. They expect it from themselves. That expectation changes how they carry themselves, how they speak, and how they make decisions. This is identity in action. When you become the standard, your behavior becomes consistent, not perfect, but consistent. You don't need to constantly remind yourself to stay calm, to think clearly, to act with discipline. It happens automatically because it aligns with who you believe you are. This removes internal conflict. Most people struggle because their actions don't match their intentions. They want to stay calm, but they react emotionally. They want to be disciplined, but they give in to distractions. This gap creates frustration. Calm people close that gap. They align their identity with their actions through repetition. Every time they pause, instead of reacting, they reinforce the identity. Every time they control their inner dialogue, they strengthen it. Every time they focus on the process instead of the outcome, they confirm it. Over time, this builds certainty, and certainty creates confidence, not the loud, attention-seeking kind, but a quiet, grounded confidence that doesn't need validation. It comes from knowing that no matter what happens, you can handle it. Not because you control everything, but because you control yourself. This is what makes calm people so effective. They don't waste energy proving themselves. They don't get pulled into unnecessary conflicts. They don't chase every opportunity or react to every problem. They stay focused on what aligns with their standard. That focus creates momentum. Another important aspect of becoming the standard is accountability. Calm people take full responsibility for their actions, their thoughts, and their results, not in a harsh or self-critical way, but in a clear and honest way. When something goes wrong, they don't look for someone to blame, they look for what they can improve. When something goes right, they don't get complacent, they look for how to maintain it. This mindset keeps them growing. It also builds trust. In professional settings, people trust those who are consistent, those who don't overreact, who don't shift based on pressure, who don't let emotions control their decisions. Calm thinkers become reliable because they are predictable in the best way. In personal relationships, the same principle applies. People feel safe around those who are steady, who listen instead of reacting, who respond with clarity instead of emotion. This stability strengthens connections. Becoming the standard also means accepting that not everyone will understand you. When you stop reacting like everyone else, when you stop engaging in unnecessary drama, when you stop chasing validation, some people may misinterpret it. They may see it as distance, as indifference, or as lack of emotion. But calm people don't adjust their standard to fit others' expectations. They stay consistent, because they understand that long-term respect is built on stability, not on constant approval. Another key part of this identity is discipline in small things. Not just in big visible moments, but in everyday actions that no one else sees. How you start your day, how you handle minor inconveniences, how you speak to yourself when things go wrong. These small moments reinforce the identity. They are the foundation, because if you can stay calm in small situations, you build the capacity to stay calm in bigger ones. If you can control your thinking when the stakes are low, you prepare yourself for when the stakes are high. This is how transformation happens, not through one big decision, but through repeated small ones. As you move forward, understand that becoming the standard is not about perfection. You will still have moments where you react, where you feel overwhelmed, where you lose clarity. That is part of being human. The difference is how quickly you return. Calm people recover faster. They recognize when they've drifted and they realign. They don't let one mistake turn into a pattern. They correct it and move forward. This keeps their identity intact, and over time that identity becomes unshakable. You reach a point where external chaos no longer dictates your internal state, where pressure sharpens you instead of breaking you, where uncertainty becomes something you navigate, not something you fear. That is the ultimate advantage, not avoiding difficulty, but mastering your response to it. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway. And subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. Now bring everything together. The space you create before reacting, that is your control. The way you guide your inner dialogue, that is your direction. The detachment from outcomes, that is your freedom. The systems you build, that is your consistency. The energy you manage, that is your sustainability. And the identity you choose, that is your foundation. This is not theory, this is practice. It shows up when you choose to pause instead of react, when you choose to think clearly instead of emotionally, when you focus on what you can control instead of what you cannot, when you follow your systems even when you don't feel like it, when you protect your energy and align your actions with your standard. Each of these choices may seem small in isolation, but together they create a different life. A life where you are not constantly pulled in different directions. A life where your decisions are intentional. A life where pressure does not overwhelm you but reveals your strength. This is what calm people have that others don't. Not fewer problems, not easier circumstances, but a different way of thinking that changes everything. So as you move forward from here, consider this. Who do you decide to be when pressure shows up? What standard are you willing to hold yourself to even when no one is watching? Where in your life do you need to stop reacting and start leading your own thinking? And if you committed to this way of thinking fully, not partially, what would your life look like a year from now? The answer to that is not something you wait for, it is something you build. One thought at a time, one decision at a time, one moment at a time, and it starts now.